It's many videos on the current situation as far as the shooting of two white people by the murder, the assassination of two members of the community who happened to be white, and Renee Good and Mr. Preddy. And you know, and I've been saying this for a long time. It's as soon as Donald Trump came down that escalator and he opened his racist ass Nazi mouth, talking horrible things about our Mexican brothers and sisters, saying all that racist shit he said, and the rest of the racist actions that he took and continues to take. It wasn't a problem for a real big issue, although, you know, the horrors that racist apparatus in the United States has been committing against people like me, people of color, against my Native American ancestors, or against brown ancestors, black, against my Latino, my African ancestors. It wasn't a problem. I mean, we've been getting enslaved, raped, incarcerated, brutalized, murdered in cold blood, mass incarcerated, redlined, and marginalized, and made to suffer for decades upon decades, hundreds of years, being exterminated, been kidnapped. You know, this doesn't get talked about enough. What is this constant obsession of Europeans and some of their descendants with kidnapping brown children? What is the problem? What's wrong with you? The original Epstein list is the founding fathers, so-called founding fathers of the United States. Jefferson had a dungeon where he kept his sex slave, Sally Hemings, 13, 14-year-old enslaved girl, where he raped her repeatedly and had offspring children by her, none of them who are entitled to any of his inheritance or his glory. So this slave-owning white man, or the original Epstein list, and now, and they continued this constant massacring of people of color in Australia and the United States, the genocide of my Native American ancestors, and the enslaved, rape, and genocide, or torture and theft of labor for hundreds of years from my enslaved African ancestors, and their the kidnapping and trafficking and sex trafficking of our children. They continue to just kidnap our children. They continue to just look what's happening. They're arresting the parent. They take the little kid. They just did it to a 5-year-old. They just randomly, openly go to a brown kid and they kidnap him if you don't have the papers. This is horrendous what's happening. And I said it before, it's going to be open season on Latinos and people of color. Okay? So, and here we are. In 2026, we have the most powerful nation on the planet releasing a private police, a bunch of masked goons, some of them being members of white supremacist groups, being unleashed on the population. And you didn't hear the outcry. You haven't heard it. The massive outcry that now we have on the streets, when that we were being lynched, when we were being mass incarcerated, when Jim Crow, when the southern states were allowed to continue their racist agenda and marginalization and modern enslavement through Jim Crow laws and through mass incarcerations and through sentencing guidelines from both parties. Now that we have two white people get murdered by the Republican Christian Gestapo, now it's a problem. So, and I keep asking, that in itself is a problem. And it's an indictment on modern society, which it just screams out loud like we have not evolved. We really have not evolved. We're still the same, and I'm talking we as a species. We have not evolved beyond classism, beyond tribalism. We're still using the same methods that Attila the Hun and Genghis Khan utilized in whenever it was that they were terrorizing the planet. We just have more advanced weaponry and better communication systems. So, I mean, case in point, look at what we're doing in Venezuela. Granted, the Venezuelan regime is a bunch of scumbags, and people, my friends on the left, say, oh, you're just, repeating imperialist propaganda. No, dude, I mean, anybody who knows me, I'm pro-independence, I'm anti-imperialism. Listen to what I'm saying. The way I talk, I'm against United States imperialism and the atrocities they have committed in all of Latin America. Now, we're not even touching what they've done, to Iraq, the atrocity, genocide of a million Iraqis and the genocide of millions of Vietnamese and so on and so forth. I'm not even touching that yet. So, but now, we need to change as a species. That I don't know if you saw this. There's a series from Australia on Netflix, and it's called Secret City. It's with Anna Torv. I love her, and without it talks about that without giving away the plot. And one of the themes in it talks about that. But when are we going to stop and internalize that it's not okay for people of color to be assassinated by their own government in the streets? When are we going to understand that it's not okay to support imperialist, genocidal, agendas from Europe, from European Christians and their descendants, and so-called first world Western nations? They get to just commit genocide, and it's just an item. The weapons that we give them. We don't even sell them shit. We give them shit. Look what we're doing with this scumbag, Netanyahu. He was like, oh, you're talking about Jews. Look, man, these are Zionists. These people are fascists. They just happen to have Hebrew ancestors. But these people are have turned what the Nazis did to their ancestors in Europe into a playbook. They're now doing to the people who took them in as refugees after World War II and before. Now they're committing genocide and ethnic cleansing, and now this government is, the Trump regime has started a peace board. That's what they call it, a board of peace for the reconstruction and the development of Gaza. I'm wondering if they're going to use the skeletons of the babies as part of the decoration inside their hotels that they're going to develop in Gaza. I mean, how horrendous is that? And here we are. You don't see any demonstrations in the street for that. Why? Because they're Arabs, and they're considered by society, white society, as less than their white cohorts, descendants of Europeans. The European supremacy is still the dominant behavior in the Western societies. It's horrendous that, and then people say, so well, at least now they're doing something. Why does it have to take the murder of white people? And people say, well, that's just the way it is. Well, there lies the problem. Therein lies the problem. That we are willing to accept that we're willing to accept that as the law of the land. That we're willing to accept this type of behavior from ourselves, from our species, and not look at ourselves as a species in the mirror saying, look, that's not cool. We have to call it out. People say, well, what good is it going to make if we say something? Well, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but me, a descendant of enslaved people, a descendant of Native Americans who were massacred by my other descendants, my European Christian descendants from Portugal and Spain. Today I can walk freely because of the sacrifices that my ancestors made. I can vote. I can make a difference. I can go get an education. You see? Because of those marches, because of the demonstrations that my African ancestors made, that my Native American ancestors made, that continue to make in the streets, that my good European ancestors made when they decided, no, I'm going to fight, I'm going to advocate, I'm going to continue advocating for the betterment of humanity. And my people, all together. Now they marched in the streets, they educated themselves, they went to parliaments. When everything else failed, when peaceful resistance was ignored and they were attacked and they had no other choice, they picked up arms and they went to war. When everything else failed and they got tired of being massacred on the streets, they organized and they armed themselves, said, well, okay, let's fight. And now today, I can go in a restaurant and sit where everybody sits. I don't, even though there are still people who have a problem with me sitting down right next to a white person, that's their problem. And I can go sue them if they discriminate. Okay? Now they're passing laws where all that history of the struggle of my ancestors is illegal to be taught to children, like in Florida, where they took out the whole curriculum about slavery. There's, the revisionist, isn't that something? That the group of people who were bitching about cancel culture. Oh, you're canceling me. They're the ones who actually canceled the history of my people, and they're doing it again. They made it illegal to teach the history of the enslavement and the extermination of my ancestors, both from Africa and from Native America. Before it was called Native America, it was Turtle Island. Man. So, it comes from the playbook of the Nazis. It's from Joseph Goebbels, the minister of propaganda for the Nazis, that said, accuse the other side of that of which you are guilty. Okay? And that's exactly what they're doing. They say they're against cancel culture. They're the main ones who have been for ages canceling this history of my ancestors, both African and Native Americans. They're the ones who have done that, and now they're stamping it with their laws. Okay, 3,000 books eliminated from the curriculum in Florida. So, I would like to think that some of the philosophers and the social critics and historians who say that when an organism is about to die, it puts up a fight, the most intense fight. Well, I would like that to be true. This organism called classism, and I'm talking about an organism as a cultural phenomena inside of many societies. And wouldn't that be nice if this is the last stand of bigotry and hatred and fascism? But unfortunately, it is not. And why is that? Because it is by design that humans behave a certain way. For instance, the right wing in the United States, the Reagan people and the oldest people have been for decades, probably almost 5 decades now. They have been designing laws that and putting people in place to destroy the United States education apparatus as far as public education. They've been destroying and attacking, defunding empirical education and spreading their lunacy based on religious indoctrination of our children. And I mean, it's right here in Puerto Rico. It's like a virus. You know, it behaves like a virus. It eats brain cells. Religion does. And people stop saying hello. Now it's God bless you. Everybody. Don't be smoking a fucking joint drunk like a motherfucker, but there's God bless you. I'm not talking about the whole society. I'm talking friends of mine that I know and stuff like that. It's just, so ingrained. It's branding what they've done. And I fear that people think, the organism that I was talking about, that some people say, well, it's dying. No, it's getting stronger. Look at the right wing, what's happening across the globe. People are openly racist, that are openly calling for the extermination again. And open scapegoating of, let's take an example, Venezuelans. So now, since Donald Trump has made it cool to be a racist piece of shit, and they continue their quote-unquote God-given right to this planet because their imaginary friend or God made them the supreme beings of Earth. And if that sounds familiar, the super species. It sound familiar? So the master race. So guess who was the one who signed off on giving everything that the Spaniards and the Europeans conquered in the New World? Guess who gave those orders? The Catholic Church. So we're back to it. And if we don't teach that to our children and we continue the whitewashing, which shouldn't be whitewashing, if anybody, and I keep saying this, if anybody should be, cautioned against being befriended, is European Christians and their descendants. Because the track record is if there's anybody who's any group of people who have been through history more adept to genocide and warfare and treachery and land theft and rape and kidnapping of children, other people's children, is European Christians or their descendants. They're still doing it as we speak. There are detention centers full of unaccompanied, kidnapped brown kids, immigrant brown kids. They keep doing this. I don't know what their obsession with brown kids is, but they need to fucking stop it. But guess what? When that shit continues to happen, they're not going to stop it. See? They need to be stopped. The one thing that characterizes fascists is that they don't just stop being fascist. They have to be stopped. And how we do that, and I keep saying, the last stop before civil conflict is going to be a national strike, the paralyzation of United States society. A week-long paralyzation, paralyze the United States. Take to the streets with 50 million people and stop the nation until these fascists are removed. Not the couple of heads of agencies like they're doing now. They're just trying to. They sacked Bovino, a Nazi piece of shit. You see, just to give him to the wolves. Here you go, have that. Chew on that for a little bit, distract you. We don't need him anyways. He's just a clown. The heads are still there. Now, we need removal, impeachment, and charged with crimes against humanity of the entire administration, started by Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, his kids, treason, all of the high crimes. That needs to happen. And that's stuff that people say, well, if we win the elections, stop. You're already talking about stopping the elections. We need to have a complete shutdown of the United States economy. A national strike, a general national strike everywhere in the United States. That's the only thing that's going to stop it. And if that doesn't work, then, because let me ask you something. If they were doing this to white kids, little white girls, if they were showing up without due process and just stopping little white girls in white neighborhoods and just kidnapping them, which is what they're doing with brown kids, and disappearing them into what are de facto for-profit concentration camps, because the people who are running the detention centers, quote-unquote detention centers, are nothing but a bunch of corporate donors to the Republican Party and personal donors to Donald Trump. It's a for-profit racket that they're running, and Donald Trump gets a cut. He's running the United States as a mob enterprise. That's a gangster. So, and you see that his supporters, smirking like they achieved something. You're a piece of shit. You understand that? If this, you're celebrating this, you're scumbag. There's no coming back from this, man. You're a scumbag. You're human trash. And that's how they're going to write about you in the history books. And rightfully so, because that's what you are. Nothing but trash. You made your bed. So go ahead, lay on it. Lay on that shit. But the reality of what we're living is that we're a crossroads in humanity. We stand at the precipice of a nuclear confrontation. It Because if they fuck up and one of those nuclear, missiles gets launched, even by mistake, it's over. And the survivors of our species, whoever survives, because it ain't just not going to be just one. Because every time there's a launch, it gets detected. And on the other side, whoever's against that, whoever the adversaries to that, even if it's not adversaries, everyone who's got, ICBMs, every time there's a launch, they have detection systems. And they point it at wherever it came from and wherever the ones that they know of are stationed. So if one gets launched, it's a response thing. And it's over. Whoever's left on our species after a nuclear exchange, which is not going to stop with just, okay, I'm sorry, don't fire, guys, calm down, don't fire. That's not how it works. If one gets launched, everybody launches, and it's over. And then the survivors are going to live in a dystopian movie set, but it's real. If we survive, whoever survives, a few, 100 millions that survive are going to have a tough time surviving. It's back to the dark ages. And, it's over. You can't eat anything. You can only eat whatever's stored. Once some of that stuff goes off, the nuclear winter renders crops unusable. You can't eat anything. Fauna dies, flora dies. I don't know if people understand how serious this situation is. And having a madman, not just in the United States, but we have madmen. But people say people want this. Well, it just go back to the bullshit about, African people sold their neighbors into slavery. Yes, the exploitation of rivalry is one of the hallmarks of European supremacy and imperialism. It's the oldest trick in the book. You got people that somewhere, neighbors that are fighting with each other. You got something you can sell them and exploit, get something in return. So you're going to turn them against each other. That's all. But they don't want to talk about the corruptor. They want to talk about the people whose conflicts got exploited and the victims of that corruption from the corruptors. See, the corruptors are always the ones to blame. Always. So, egging on conflict. And when this is what's going on right now. We got this guy with a bunch of people say, oh, no, he's just being manipulated. You're not being manipulated. He's a piece of shit. I mean, if you still think like that, you're an idiot. This guy's evil, an evil scumbag. And the people around him, are pieces of shit too. From J.D. Vance to, again, the supporters, the hardcore supporters. There's no saving grace for these people. They're going to go to their grave wanting, to remain in their position of power, regardless of how many people get harmed, how many brown children get kidnapped, how many people get murdered in the streets. So back to the original. It wasn't a problem until white people started getting murdered, like we have been getting murdered for a long time by the same system. And I was listening to Dr. Cornel West the other day. He's like, hey, now you get it. We're witnessing the niggerization of the United States. Because now those who oppose the regime are getting treated like those of us brown people of color have been getting treated for about 400 years, probably longer, right? And if your response is, well, they sold their own, it's like, no, dude, somebody exploited. And then you just listen. See, this is what's important about history and studying and understanding it. Context. Just because we have the use of intelligence doesn't mean we're going to use it critically and correctly as a species. Tribalism and fractures within our species have always existed. And we have to make a choice if we want to survive as a species, if we want to thrive. Are we going to act as a species that is symbiotic with itself and the environment, the biosphere in which we exist and which we are a part of, even though we have not been acting like we're a part of? We're trying to constantly shield ourselves from the environment, from nature, from all of that, as if we were some foreign entity from it. And that is a question that I ask myself. And more and more we try to distance ourselves from the earth that we are made of, that gave us life, the more and more we distance ourselves from the chances of survival as a species and as part of the biosphere, and therefore we distance ourselves from a planet. This trick that the powerful always play, that hey, let's colonize Mars, let's colonize this, we have one planet, man, that's inhabitable within our reach. We need to take care of it, and we need to take care of each other, because at the end of the day, we are all we have. Each other is all we have. We won't survive. There's not going to be any colonization. They're just milking your stupidity, the stupidity of our species, because they get all these contracts, like Elon Musk and the rest of the death dealers. I call them death dealers. They deal death. It's just nicely packaged for those who don't read or don't understand it. They keep polluting the crap out of everything. Oh, well, he's got Tesla and electric. He couldn't give a shit about the planet. That man pollutes the crap out of everything. Not because electric vehicles are inherently polluting. It's because once the lithium is out of the mine, it can be recycled. But it's, they sell you this stuff. He's not the first death merchant. All these people who have gotten gazillions, ginormous contracts, pissing money away in this, utopia, non-functional utopia that we're going to colonize something else, when all we need to do is take care of this planet. And we can do it. We have the technology to do it. We're just stuck in this cycle of classism and inspired by generations upon generations of imperialism, and which is based on classism, and that belief that we are better than such and such, and we should be able to conquer them and exploit them and enslave them. The Roman Empire model, and the whole consume until there's nothing else to consume, and then whatever we shit out is polluted. So the model that we have right now is unsustainable, and we're at a point in our history of our species and of the planet where if we don't cool down like rapidly, the consequences of climate change, if we don't kill ourselves in a nuclear war, because of the current systems of imperialism and predatory capitalism, life on Earth will be unsustainable for the majority of humans and many other species. It will be uninhabitable for most of the people. In order to sustain human life, and a lot of other lives, I mean, the rate of species extinction on the planet is astronomical right now. So it doesn't matter how much money you're making, whatever it is you're making. If you're, what are you going to do with it? You can't eat anything, you know. And you think you have movements of people right now, as far as people moving and trying to go somewhere. Yeah, wait till tropical regions are made uninhabitable by catastrophic, constant catastrophic hurricanes and other climate events. Because it's just, all those people, where do you think they're going to go? See, this is the problem with market economies. When everything is for exchange, sure, it's nice to get up and go to the supermarket and pick up food and cook it and stuff, and all you got to do is give them this paper or do a transaction with a card or something like that, and you eat. Well, that same force, market economy, that allows that to happen destroys it. It's self-consuming. Why? Because of the greed of it. It's all about the bottom line. And you have these markets that are fed by failing, ever so dwindling providers of, let's say, grain or beef or whatever it is that we're consuming, food, because monopolies have consumed all the profit, and they've made it impossible to profit from, because they consumed all the profit. So the guy who produces at the bottom it doesn't have any incentive, because we allowed the two conglomerates who control all the wholesale purchasing and distribution of whatever it is, grain or beef or whatever it is. They're making all the profits, and they're giving all the profits to themselves, and eventually there won't be anybody to produce anything, because we've allowed greed and classism. We keep worshiping these ungodly rich people and giving them all the profits, and by law we allow them to contribute, to buy off politicians who make the laws true and not pay taxes and not contribute shit, so they can accumulate all the wealth and starve out everybody. And then what is it that we have accomplished? And the minute there's a shortage, and the minute there's a catastrophe, no one can afford to even eat, because there's only a few producers, and the wholesalers and the people on top, they're the ones who control it, all the purchasing and distribution of it, and nobody can afford to eat. And if there's a catastrophe, you follow? No, nobody can go to their backyard and say, hey, go. Well, at least let's just start planting stuff. That takes time. And we don't have time, because we have 3 jobs, and we're told that's just like the Auschwitz had it on their work will set you free. Now, work will, eventually will enslave you and kill you and starve you if you perform it under a system that exploits you, which is what we're doing. But we get called communist or whatever, leftist or socialist. All right. At the end of the day, the current system is unsustainable. It's going to choke us all to death if we don't kill each other in a Armageddon-style war, something like that. But we need to wake up. This, and I'm not to to exclude, not to exculpate Donald Trump and the rest of the scum, the human trash that rules the earth. But him and the rest of the people who think like him, that are in power, are just a symptom of predatory capitalism, of classism. And people say, well, and then you always notice that people who have been colonized, not all, but eventually a large portion of the people who get colonized by other peoples, mainly the people who get colonized by the Western nations, by European Christians and their descendants, or get abused or exploited by them, end up with a large percent of the population wanting to emulate the lifestyle of the colonizer, wanting to be just like the people who colonized them. So, isn't that something? We want to buy shit. Give me some shiny shit. I need some rims. And it's by design, because they've turned you into consumption machines. That's exactly what they wanted you to be. Buy shit. Buy some shit. Buy some shit. Make you happy a little bit, not too long. But if you want to keep it, you buy a house and you gotta pay me taxes on it. And if not, I'll take it from you. So you end up never owning shit. And you got 300 million people paying ungodly amounts of taxes, repetitive. Every time they buy something, resell it, buy it, resell it, buy it, resell it. They pay tax again, never ends. And, you end up a fucking slave. And the dream is to accumulate as much shit as you can. For what reason? I don't know what it is, but it's a psychological reason. That's why if you walk into any major university in the world, all superpowers, you will see this. One of the most prolific or most powerful departments in their universities, it's the psychology department. It is by far one of the most powerful tools of any governance system. If you control the brains and you can manipulate people, you own them. So you manipulate their belief system and you keep them. And it's like I see, and I'm married to a Venezuelan, and she was all hell-bent, all hopeful that Maria Corina Machado was going to get elected and she was going to straighten up Venezuela. Maria Corina Machado is a piece of shit. It's a right-wing, elite scumbag. And she got elected, but of course she wasn't going to get handed over the win. You got another scumbags, a bunch of other groups of scumbags that weren't going to let that happen. We said, well, at least people were like, at least it was going to get better. Really? Really? Overnight, you think, the infrastructure in Venezuela is going to be built and, rebuilt and all the guerrilla movements and all the. And then my dad, my adoptive father, he was telling me, talking about the other day, he's like, I never hear about Venezuela having crops, agriculture. And it's a beautiful country with tremendously fertile terrain. But they didn't diversify. I say they, I'm talking about the right-wing governments that preceded the Hugo Chavez government. So Hugo Chavez said, Hugo Chavez destroyed. Hugo Chavez just finished it off. It just finished off what had been started. And then the embargoes just finished destroying it. So I don't know what to tell you, again, we need a complete rethinking and a paradigm shift a fundamental paradigm shift of existence for our species, Homo sapiens, if we are to survive. God, I really hope so for my son, for my boy, that we can leave him something better, man. Because we are fucking up royally. But for now, once again, we need to take to the streets in large numbers, humongous numbers, and stop this atrocity that the fascist Nazi Donald Trump administration is perpetrating against not just the United States, but the planet. We must resist.